Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today, a little bit of a different one. It's a French-made reel in the 1950s. It's the RU Sport Deluxe. And I got a little bit ahead of myself. Dick from Philadelphia sent this reel in. I serviced it, and then everybody came in with requests to see the servicing on it. Well, I'll give you an abbreviated version of that today. I'll show you how the reel is made. We'll talk a little bit about it, but we're not going to go do the full take apart and service that you might normally be aware of seeing. So this is a French-made reel, 1950s, circa half of a bale, and it's a nice made reel. There's a lot of fans for the RU Sport, RU Pacific, RU Atlantic, and other versions of the reel. And let's just talk briefly about it. So the reel is made of an alloy, and I believe it's aluminum up top, and whatever the alloy is below, it's enameled. So that should be salt resistant. And a couple of the features that they mentioned, it's a low-speed reel, which means like torque and horsepower in cars. This one's got all the torque, right? So low speed is going to enable you to hold on and haul in big fish. You won't be ripping anything out of their mouth. But they compensated for that. This is all by the way of their manual. They compensated for that by giving you a wide spool. So that means that even though it's going around fewer times on the turn, the diameter of the reel means that the line that is actually coming on is more. So they've compensated, kind of turned a low-speed reel into a high-speed reel. They also tell you a couple of things about this that's kind of interesting. There's only one drag washer in this reel. You'll see it when I take the reel apart. But that drag washer is going to give you a max drag. Let's say it's 8 pounds or whatever. So what they're telling you to do, you're fishing the reel like this, of course, with the rod and all, that you can increase your max drag by palming the reel, right? So you've got your pole, and if it's stripping out line too much, just put your palm in there, slow it down, give it that way. Or if it's not that much, as you're fishing, you can use your forefinger to grab the piece up top here and slow the line going out and give you additional drag. So I thought that was kind of neat. We did the 300 Ocean City. We showed you that's a knuckle buster. That does not have an anti-reverse. This one does. It's in the off position right now. But if you click it this way, you do have the brake, right? You have that anti-reverse going on there. And you also have a half bale. And the manual itself, which I found available at ORCA, the Old Reel Collectors Association, or something to that effect, tells you that this could be converted to a manual bale, and the actual conversion is in the manual itself. So if you don't like the idea of the half bale pickup, and that's something I learned to fish on. I learned to fish saltwater reels with a half bale on a Centaur, whatever it is, another French-made reel, Centaure. I'll never pronounce that correctly, I guess. But at any rate, they had the half bale on that one as well. So kind of an interesting reel. This one's in good condition. If you were a collector, you wouldn't be purchasing it for a collection, because there is a little chip in the reel seat here, and that you would get points taken away for that. But let's go underneath. And while we go underneath, I want to thank our first responders, our essential personnel, and everybody involved in trying to keep us safe during this pandemic. Your efforts truly are appreciated. I don't know how you get up and do it every day, but thank you for doing what you do. Truly appreciate it. All right, so there's a wing nut up top here, which is your drag adjuster or your tensioner knob. Inside that, there's a spring, and that's what's going to be holding your spool on. You'll see the spring and the nut inside. It's an aluminum spool that can come off. There's your drag washer. That's it. Now that drag washer, I believe, if that was worn, this one's in pretty good condition. If that was worn, I believe you can find a Penn 60 or a Penn Jigmaster washer that you could probably substitute for that if you needed to. I don't think that those are generally available anymore. The only recommended service on this reel, on a regular basis, they tell you to put a drop of oil on the axle shaft, pull this oil access port and put a drop of oil onto your pinion gear, and then pull this oil access screw to put a drop of oil onto your main drive shaft. That's it. They tell you after every use, go ahead and do that. Sage advice out there. One of the things they tell you about that in the manual is too much oil isn't going to hurt the reel, but too little oil will damage it. So let's show you what's going on underneath here. Normally, if I did a full take apart, I would take the rotor off. In this case, you don't have to. There's nothing under there. There's a bushing. There's no bearing, and kind of credit to it. Now, when I took this reel off the first time, there was tons of dried grease in here. And one of the things the manual tells you about that as well is at the end of the season to go ahead and remove all the old grease and re-lube it before you put it away. So the problem with that is that at some point in time somebody stops fishing this reel, doesn't do that kind of service, puts it up on a rack in the rafters or in the garage or in a closet or wherever they're storing their fishing tackle, and years later somebody goes and tries to take this reel fishing and it's very sluggish, to say the least. Well, there's a reason for that. All the grease dried, and that's exactly what happened in this reel. Even though this reel was not sluggish, and Dick will tell you that it was spinning nicely, it was just full of loaded grease that was dried. Okay, 3 screws out. We're going to pull the side plate, show you what's underneath here, and you can see that it's been cleaned and greased, but there's not much going on other than that. I'm going to pull the main gear out for a moment just to show you, if you have this apart, how to service that. So what you would normally do is you pull the screw that's holding the axle shaft in. You can pull the shaft up. That would give you access to the cavity here, and you can clean that out. Use a cotton swab or whatever you will. Clean the grease. This was absolutely packed with grease, but clean the grease that's in the main gear. This has got new grease on it now. Clean the teeth, and then as you go behind, make sure that you grease the axle shaft and you grease the back slide here, where it's going to be riding against the plate, just in case. So that's kind of it, right? You have an axle shaft that's going to move up and down. You've got a pin in the middle here that's going to center the pin, and then you've got the eccentric, kind of a swing. It's an offset, right? It's an offset in the main gear. That's the track where that screw from the axle shaft is actually going to house itself, and that screw is going to be the drive to push the axle shaft up and down. So this guy here, this screw is serving dual purpose, right? It's holding the axle shaft in, and it also becomes the ride to push your axle shaft up and down. So they tell you to go ahead and, if you like, remove that, remove this, take the nut off here. You won't see anything under here, but that'll give you access if you want to pull down on your pinion gear and you want to go clean that surface up. But again, I got ahead of myself. I did that. I'm not going to do that again here, but I did want to show you how the inside of this reel comes together. Now, the way you put it back together, those of you that may have it apart and start to wonder, is find your main pin, find the hole, kind of set this in about the middle somewhere, and then just visibly line the hole with the gear, and then rotate your main gear until you find where that axle shaft is seated. There you go. That's it. Lies flat. If you like, you can turn it with this. Make sure that it's turning properly. And once you do that, then you can reset this. And I always recommend when you're resetting to do what I did. Make sure that the anti-reverse is in the off position. You can put, I did this earlier, you can put a drop of oil onto the little contact points here just to keep that going. You want to make sure, and again, I apologize, I got ahead of myself on this one, but I did want to show Dick how to do this. Put a little bit more on that axle shaft there, make sure you're seated. Then you can come in and you can load the side plate on. can button up the reel and take it for a drive. Just trying to line up the screw holes. There we go. All right, so that is your RU Sport. The others, there's not much difference on that whole line in terms of the mechanics behind it. There's a little bit of a different bail trip on some. I was looking at the schematics. A little bit of a different bail trip, but not much. So if you like this kind of stuff, I work on all kinds of reels. Many of you who are watching my channel know it doesn't really matter much to me what the reel is, whether it's an old reel or a new reel, whether it's a bait caster, a spinning reel, a conventional reel, a large saltwater trolling reel, all brands basically. If you like that kind of stuff, if you're interested in this as a hobby, I totally recommend it. You can find a lot of reels inexpensively at flea markets and garage sales and who knows where else, but I kind of know where else, and pawn shops and thrift stores and all kinds of places. And you want to just take them apart and tune them up and take them fishing again. Well, that's kind of what Second Chance is all about here. It's getting them out there, getting them fishing again. And if you like this sort of thing, I would ask you to subscribe. That way you won't miss my episodes, and you'll see the different types of reels that I'm working on. I just ran into a fellow the other day, Don, and Don is a specialist in Shimano Bantam reels, and boy, does he have a beautiful collection of those. So you may just choose to specialize in one particular model of a particular manufacturer, maybe the Senators for Penn, for example, or you may choose to just kind of welcome all comers like I do, and you never know what you're going to find out as a result. And you find that you actually like this, and next thing you know, your friends will be asking you to do their reels, and then you'll try to figure out whether you got a little business here or something. Okay, so we're going to just put this back on. I'll give you the drive, but that's kind of how you button this reel up. It's not a very difficult reel. I've always said that the simpler the design, the better it is for the reel. It certainly is for the operation of it. And, you know, sometimes folks try to overcomplicate things, right? You hear the better mousetrap. Sometimes it's just that little bit of wire on that piece of wood that's the answer, right? And if you keep them simple, there's less to break, and you get a beautiful reel like this as a result. So that's it. That's your RU Mur. It's the RU Sport Deluxe. It's a reel made in France in, I'm going to think, the late 50s, and probably the 60s as well. It probably carried through. I know the folks that watch the channel will know exactly what that is or when that is. I did find it interesting that the manual for this was produced in Newark, New Jersey. So I guess it was imported, and then they printed the manual here in English to tell you how to make this reel work. But at any rate, I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please subscribe. And if you do subscribe, please hit the notification button so that you see all that I post. If you have questions on this reel, if you have clarifications, if you want to tell me a little bit about the manufacturing company itself, then I would ask you to use the comment facility for that. And finally, if you have a reel that needs to be repaired or tuned up, or just plain I'd like to see it taken apart and you don't want to do it yourself, then please contact me by email on the business card that follows, and I'll be happy to provide you with that information. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.